Your plants are wasting energy right now, and it's making your garden look terrible. Most homeowners have no idea that leaving dead flowers in plants actually prevents new blooms from forming. I'm Nick Federoff, PBS host and six-time Telly Award winner, and I see this mistake everywhere. Today, I'm revealing why deadheading religiously transforms ordinary gardens into continuous blooming masterpieces. Plus, the secret pruning spot that makes roses explode with flowers. Like and subscribe now. What in the world is deadheading in the first place? So when you have a flower, and probably the most recognizable flower, because it's America's #1 flower, would be a rose. So when you see a rose and it opens up and it blossoms and it opens up and it gets nice and big and you enjoy it, whether it's on the plant or whether it's something that was a cut flower that you got at the nursery, at a florist shop, and you gave it to the loved one in your life and you seen it open up. We're going to talk about the live plants right now. We're not going to talk about the dead ones. But when you have it on the plant and it's opened up and then it browns out on you, what we need to do is we need to do something called deadheading. And deadheading refers to removing spent blossoms. And we do this on a regular basis. Sometimes it's daily. So you have to keep that in mind. Sometimes it's all about nipping them in the bud. You ever heard that saying? Nip it in the bud? Well, that's all about doing that. Nip it in the bud, pulling that off, or is it just pulling? Because for some of these plants, you actually have to do this methodically, and you have to have tools to do it. But regardless, at this point, we are removing the spent blossoms to encourage continuous flowering. That's why we remove it. If you were to leave a rose bush, for instance, alone, and you just allow it to grow, it flowers, sure, it'll give you more flowers. New buds will grow, and there's a reason behind that. And that's because you've got these branches, and it's been, look, you've got branches, and the branches have grown to a certain point. They've got flowers coming off of them. Well, there's buds that are underneath, and it's going to realize, hey, what's going on here? Why aren't you flowering anymore? So it's going to send off one of the buds, another branch, and that will flower. But it's not going to be just so flowery, if you may, but it's just going to be more sporadic, and it's not going to be as pretty, and the plant's not going to be as pretty. It actually starts to turn leggy on you, and you have fewer leaves on the plant. So deadheading is really important. So once you see, for instance, a rose, what you want to do is you want to take it and you want to follow it back to a leaf node or to another bud and cut it off cleanly. So for instance, to a healthy part of the stem. You ever see roses and you were to take and just to pull off that bud and you leave that little stick on there? What happens to that? It dies. It dies back to where you should have pruned it, back to that leaf. That's where you should have pruned it. So you just don't take and pull it off, you cut it back. Another great example to where you need to cut it back, and this is a hard one to do, even I'll admit that, are marguerites. You familiar with those? Usually they're white or yellow. They kind of look like daisies. And you'll get the whole plant just filled with flowers, and then the flower dies, and then it automatically starts dying back to where it wants to be pruned. That the plants are telling you where it wants to be pruned back to. So we have to obey that by coming through and pulling them off, or using something like a pair of secateurs, pruners, hand pruners, or shears, depending on the type of plant. And then we cut it off, and we cut it off clearly and cleanly. so that the plant can rejuvenate itself. You see, what happens is that deadheading prevents energy waste on seed production. It prevents the plant from basically going into a type of dormancy. You want the production of the plant to go and to grow. Now, mind you, this is not for all plants. This is for a lot of plants, and a couple of which I've already mentioned to you. Pruning back that, in fact, check this one out. Did you know that certain varieties, and I'll give you a good example, you have rhododendrons and azaleas. They don't continuously bloom. They maybe have 1 or 2 blooming cycles, and that's pretty much it. All right, so when a plant is done flowering, that's when we're supposed to prune anyhow. But for those that are constantly blooming, constantly flowering, those are the ones that we have to come through and deadhead. So you have to really understand what you're doing. Take a camellia, for instance. I don't care if it's a Sasanqua or Camellia japonica. What happens is that you'll see those things, and they just get really brown and ugly. You can take and you could pull that whole flower head off, but the place where it's attached to that bud, it stays behind. If you were to take and cut that off, and sometimes you got to use floral shears, and these are just kind of like straight, they kind of look like scissors, long pointed scissors. Sometimes you have to take those and you have to manipulate them in there and cut them off and pull them off. And what that's going to do, it will encourage more blooming and blossoming. And some of the perennials will rebloom, and you'll get a flush of new growth to the plant. So understanding which plants will do this is really important for the health of the plant. I don't want you to think that the plant is dying off. Let me tell you something. I go to a lot of landscape consultations, and people will call me up and they'll see all of these gardenias, for instance, and all the flowers are just all browned out on them. And it's like they think that the plant is dead. No. It's not dead. You have to deadhead. So just like you would with the azaleas, just like you would with the roses, you would take and you would prune them off. Don't get lazy, because something like a gardenia plant, if you were to shake it real hard, camellias will do it too, and rhododendrons. You take and you just shake it real hard like this, and if you shake it back and forth, many times there's so many browned out flowers that they're just going to fall off the plant. And I don't think you want that. I think you want this thing to be full of flowers, and by coming back and by pruning it again. Because if you don't prune it again, and if you don't cut them back to a bud, those are the problems you're going to have. And by the way, you can also take and you can fertilize the plants lightly after you deadhead. Because you got to remember, you had a flush of growth. You had this, it was supporting this flower. And then the flower's dying off on you, and it's like, where's it getting its energy from? And it's drawing from it and it's giving to it, but it's not going to flower again. So fertilizing on a regular basis is really important. And with that, that's how we end up becoming religious, by deadheading. And going to church isn't a bad idea either.